In 1843, leaving Independence, Missouri did not just mean heading west. It meant pulling a canvas-covered wagon onto a 2,000-mile trail of prairie, river crossings, fever camps, broken axles, and mountain passes where no sheriff could hear you. These families were not soldiers. They were farmers, mothers, children, and teamsters walking beside oxen, with every useful thing they owned packed under canvas. The trail did not care what looked like a weapon. A wrench, a bullet mold, an ox goad, or a pan tied to a warning line could matter before a rifle cleared its blanket. Trail journals from the 1840s remembered drowned animals, wagon wrecks, wet crossings, and accidental gunshots more than heroic gunfights. Number 14 waited in the dark and stole an intruder's silence. Number 7 was primitive until rain made firearms uncertain. Number 3 gave a family 2 chances before the dark moved closer. And number 1 made ordinary people believe Oregon was possible. Hit subscribe. Let us count down the 25 forgotten survival weapons pioneer families packed under canvas on the Oregon Trail. Number 25. The draw knife. A draw knife did not look like a frontier weapon at first glance. It looked like work, a steel blade stretched between 2 wooden handles, made for shaving wagon spokes, shaping axe handles, smoothing yoke pins, and cutting rough timber down to size. But on the Oregon Trail, repair work was survival. One broken spoke could stop a family outside the wagon circle while the rest of the train kept moving. In the 1840s, trail journals treated wagon damage like a private emergency because a dead wagon could turn food, bedding, tools, and children into stranded weight. It belonged under the canvas. No one questioned it. But beside a campfire after dark, that same 2-handled blade could change the room before a rifle was even lifted. It was packed for wood, not blood. That made it easier to keep close. Number 24. The wagon wrench. The wagon wrench was the kind of object history forgets because it did not look heroic. It was iron, heavy, plain, and built for one job, keeping the wagon from dying under its own weight. A prairie schooner could carry roughly 2,000 to 2,500 pounds when a family left Missouri. Flour, bacon, bedding, tools, powder, spare parts, and children's belongings rode on wheels that had to survive mud, rock, ruts, and riverbanks. If a nut loosened, the wrench came out before the rifle did. No sheriff's report on the trail needed to call it a weapon. Every man in camp knew what a heavy iron tool could do at arm's length. In daylight, it tightened the wagon. After midnight, it tightened the distance between a stranger and the fire. Number 23. The wolf trap. The wolf trap was there because livestock was the engine of the journey. An ox, mule, horse, or cow was not just an animal on the Oregon Trail. It was movement, milk, meat, trade value, and the only thing standing between a family and a wagon too heavy to pull. A steel trap near the stock line could be ugly, but so was waking up to blood in the grass and one less animal tied to the rope. Across the Platte River country, families learned that danger did not always walk toward the wagon. Sometimes it circled the livestock first. The trap waited in weeds, dust, or trampled grass, where a careless step could turn silence into metal. It did not guard the canvas. It guarded what made the canvas move. Number 22. The bullet mold. The bullet mold was not frightening because it looked like a weapon. It was frightening because without it, a rifle slowly became dead weight. A simple mold could be iron or brass, usually made in 2 hinged halves, cut to cast round balls for the caliber a family carried. On the trail, loose lead mattered. A broken ball, scrap lead, or old shot could be melted near camp and turned into something a rifle could use again. That was not luxury. That was arithmetic. A family leaving Missouri could not assume every trading post would have the right ammunition, the right price, or any supply at all. Once the wagon rolled past the settled edge, every usable ball became meat, warning, or distance. The bullet mold did not defend the camp by itself. It made sure the rifle still could. Number 21. The flintlock musket. By the time many families rolled west in the 1840s, the flintlock musket was already old technology. Percussion arms were spreading, but many families could not buy better. So the old musket came down from above the fireplace, smooth bore, Heavy, slow to load, and honest only at short distance, it was the weapon a family owned before Oregon. Loading could take close to a minute. Powder, ball, ramrod, priming, and then hope that the flint still had spark. Wet weather made it worse. Trail accounts remembered men covering locks with oilcloth and praying through rainstorms and river crossings. When the pan failed, the musket stopped being a firearm and became a club with a family history carved into the stock. It was not the best weapon on the trail. It was the one poverty refused to leave behind. The first weapons on this trail were chosen because a family already needed them. A draw knife repaired wood. A wrench kept the wagon alive. A trap guarded the animals. A bullet mold kept rifles from becoming dead weight. Even the old flintlock came west because poverty had already packed it. That was the Oregon Trail's first rule. Nothing useless stayed under canvas for long. From here, the list gets more intentional. The next objects kept powder dry, animals controlled, fires burning, and strangers outside the wagon line. Number 20. The powder horn. A powder horn was not a weapon until the moment every weapon depended on it. Made from cow horn or buffalo horn, sealed with a wooden plug, and fitted with a narrow pouring spout, it kept black powder dry through rain, river mist, and prairie humidity. A standard horn could hold about a pound of powder, enough for dozens of careful shots. In jumping off towns like Independence and Street Joseph, powder could be bought by the pound before the wagon rolled west. But once the trail swallowed the towns behind you, every dry charge mattered. A wet rifle was only wood and iron. A dry horn meant meat over the fire, warning shots in the night, and one more chance when the camp heard something moving beyond the animals. It did not fire the shot. It made the shot possible. Number 19. The ox goad. The ox goad was not packed for fighting. It was packed because 2,000 pounds of wagon did not move unless the animals moved first. A working goad could be a long hickory or ash pole, sometimes 5 or 6 feet, sometimes tipped with iron, carried by a teamster walking beside the oxen. It gave a man reach without stepping under horns, hooves, and wheels. On a flat road, that meant control. On mud, riverbanks, or a narrow grade, it could mean the difference between a moving wagon and a dead stop. Old trail life depended on animals more than machinery. If the oxen froze, bolted, or refused a crossing, the family's whole world sat still behind them. In the wrong moment, that same pole became more than a signal stick. It could keep a stranger, a dog, or a panicked animal outside the line where one bad step could ruin the wagon. Number 18. The Colt Dragoon Revolver. The Colt Dragoon was not the common family gun. It was too expensive, too heavy, and too serious to disappear unnoticed under a wagon seat. Introduced in 1848, it fired a .44 caliber ball from 6 chambers and weighed more than 4 pounds loaded. At around $25, it could cost nearly a month's wages. That put it in the hands of scouts, guides, military men, and wealthier travelers. But when one appeared near a wagon train, it changed how close danger could get. A muzzleloader gave a man 1 shot before the long work of reloading. The Dragoon gave him 6 chances in seconds. On open ground, that mattered. In a camp argument, it mattered faster. It was not packed by everyone, but everyone understood what it meant when the cylinder turned. Number 17. The bullwhip. The bullwhip was carried for oxen before it was ever feared by men. Braided from rawhide and often running 10 to 12 feet, it let a skilled teamster control a heavy wagon team. A good whip cost real money at an outfitting town, but losing control of oxen cost more. Wagons leaving Missouri could weigh over 2,000 pounds, and those animals were not decorations. They were the only engine the family had. The crack of a whip could move a team, scatter dogs, turn livestock, or warn anything creeping near the edge of camp. At close range, the braided handle itself could strike like a club. From farther away, the lash could reach before a knife ever could. The sound came first. That was the point. On the trail, warning was sometimes better than blood. Number 16. The lariat. The lariat looks simple because rope always looks simple until something runs. 30 feet of braided rawhide could hold a mule, catch a loose horse, drag brush, steady a river crossing, or keep livestock from vanishing into grass before dawn. On the plains, losing an animal could mean abandoning a loaded wagon, tools, food, and sometimes the dream itself. Trail memories from the Platte country did not need an enemy to become grim. One broken harness or missing ox could do enough damage. In the wrong hands, the lariat also became a weapon of control. Doubled over, it could knock a man off balance. Thrown well, it could stop movement before a fight reached the wagon. It was not frightening because it killed. It was frightening because it kept what mattered from getting away. Number 15. The sharpened spade. The sharpened spade was not the weapon any dime novel wanted to remember. It was too plain for legend, a flat steel blade and a long wooden handle. Every wagon camp needed one. It dug fire pits, buried waste, scraped mud from wheels, and helped grade down creek banks before a crossing. A standard farm spade often came from the family's old place back east, which meant it cost nothing to pack and too much to lose. That ordinary look made it dangerous. A woman left in camp while men hunted did not need a military saber beside the bedding. She needed something already leaning near the fire. With a filed edge, a spade could chop brush, kill a snake, or make a stranger step back from sleeping children. There was nothing romantic about it. That was why it belonged on the trail. Number 14. The tin pan alarm line. Number 14 was not carried in a pocket, and it was not fired from the shoulder. It waited in the dark. A tin pan alarm line could be as simple as cord, scrap wire, cups, pans, or loose metal tied low near the wagon circle or stock line. On a moonless night, sound became protection. One wrong step could turn quiet into a crash of tin before a hand reached the wagon flap. Old overland camps had no electric lamps, telephones, or sheriff close enough to matter. They had dogs if they were lucky, firelight if the weather allowed it, and sometimes a line of cheap noise stretched where silence was most dangerous. It did not wound the intruder. It did something more useful. It stole his secret and gave the camp 30 seconds to wake up. Number 13. The pepperbox pistol. The pepperbox pistol looked like a mechanical mistake until a man counted the barrels. 4 to 6 short barrels rotated around a central axis, each holding its own charge. By the 1840s and 1850s, Allen-style pepperboxes were common enough, but not cheap enough to be careless. Many sold for around $6 to $10, more than a simple knife, and less than a fine frontier rifle. They fit in a coat pocket, a wagon seat, or a small bag kept close by a woman in camp. The problem was accuracy. Beyond close distance, the pepperbox was wild, smoky, and sometimes more frightening to its owner than the target. But the Oregon Trail did not always give people clean distances. At 10 feet, precision mattered less than 6 loaded barrels. It was ugly, unreliable, and still better than an empty hand. Number 12. The cavalry saber. The cavalry saber sounded out of place beside flour barrels, coffee sacks, and children's bedding. After the Mexican-American War ended in 1848, veterans moved west with scars and surplus arms. A Model 1840 Dragoon saber had a curved blade around 35 inches long made for mounted soldiers, not tired farm families walking beside oxen. On the trail, it could clear brush, cut rope, butcher large game in a crude way, or hang from a wagon captain's belt as a sign that someone meant to keep order. That mattered. In a moving camp, authority was fragile. A man with a saber did not need to swing it for everyone to understand the message. In close quarters, 35 inches of steel gave reach no pocket knife could match. It was not built for the Oregon Trail. But the trail had a way of reusing old violence. Number 11. The Arkansas toothpick. The Arkansas toothpick did not pretend to be a farm tool. That was what made it different. It often carried a double-edged blade 12 to 18 inches long, closer to a short sword than a camp knife. It was poor for skinning, awkward for carving wood, and too specialized to look innocent. Its purpose was close trouble, and men in river towns, gambling rooms, and frontier camps understood that before any court had to explain it. By the 1830s and 1840s, Southern weapon laws already treated large fighting knives with suspicion. But west of the settled courts, Enforcement grew thin fast. For a traveler who could not afford a revolver, the toothpick offered reach, concealment, and speed. It was called a toothpick because frontier humor could be cruel. But no one laughed when the blade came out under canvas. Notice the pattern now. These families were not packing weapons for glory. They were packing answers to problems that could kill them slowly. Rain could ruin powder. A loose animal could strand a wagon. Darkness could hide a stranger. Too much weight could break the team before the mountains began. The trail valued objects differently than towns did. A cheap pan could buy 30 seconds. A rope could save a month of walking. A rough tool could matter more than a polished weapon if it was already in the right hand. From here, the list moves into rifles, wagon hardware, heavy clubs, and frontier blades. But the rule stays the same. Nothing survived under canvas unless it earned its place. Number 10. The Kentucky Long Rifle. The Kentucky Long Rifle carried memory west before it carried confidence. Many families brought it because it had already hung over a fireplace in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Ohio, or Kentucky. Its barrel could stretch 40 to 48 inches, long and narrow, built for eastern forests where a careful shot through trees mattered more than speed. Most fired a smaller ball, often around 40 to 45 caliber, which saved lead and powder, but did not give the same heavy force a plains hunter wanted against buffalo or larger danger. That was the problem. The rifle was accurate, but the country had changed. From the Platte Country toward South Pass, an old family rifle could feel too long, too light, and too slow. Some men cut down barrels after reaching the plains. The Kentucky rifle shot straight. The trail did not. Number 9. The Hawken Plains Rifle. The Hawken was the rifle ordinary emigrants noticed. Built in Street, Louis by the Hawken brothers, these heavy plains rifles were tied to mountain men, hunters, scouts, and guides before most wagon families ever saw the Rockies. A Hawken could weigh 10 to 12 pounds and often fired a 52, 54 caliber ball. That made it stronger against large game and more suitable for open country than the lighter rifles many families brought from the East. But power had a price. At $25 or more, a good Hawken could cost more than many families wanted to spend before a 5-month journey. That is why it often rode with the man ahead of the wagons. When a guide carried one near Fort Laramie or South Pass, it meant distance had become part of the weapon. The Hawken was not just a rifle. It was professional confidence in iron and walnut. Number 8. The Wagon Brake Lever. The wagon brake lever was not a weapon in the way a rifle or knife was. It was worse than that. It was part of the machine keeping a family from being crushed by its own journey. On steep grades, a loaded wagon could become a runaway weight of wood, iron, canvas, and supplies. A brake lever pressed the brake shoe against the wheel, slowing the descent before oxen lost control. When a prairie schooner carried more than 2,000 pounds, stopping mattered as much as moving. A broken brake on a mountain road could scatter flour, tools, bedding, and children's lives down a slope in seconds. That made the lever one of the most serious pieces of hardware on the wagon. And if it came loose in a camp argument, its meaning changed fast. A length of hard wood or iron built to stop a wagon could stop a man, too. The brake lever was not famous because it was not carried on the belt. It was bolted to survival. Number 7. The War Club. The War Club sounds too old to belong beside rifles and revolvers. Some weapons stayed alive because they were too simple to fail. A trail-made club might be nothing more than a hardwood handle weighted with stone scrap iron or a heavy root knob bound tight with rawhide. It needed no black powder, no percussion cap, no gunsmith, and no dry weather. A man could shape one from what the riverbank, broken wagon pile, or camp wood already gave him. Trail accounts from the 1850s sometimes described improvised clubs kept near bedrolls, not because men wanted to look savage, but because close danger gave little time for ceremony. In rain, exhaustion, smoke, or dark canvas shadow, a club did not misfire. It did not jam. It did not ask for steady hands. Number 7 was primitive for the same reason it was frightening. It worked when better weapons became complicated. Number 6. The Green River Knife. If the Bowie knife was the legend, the Green River Knife was the worker that actually crossed the continent by the thousands. Made by John Russell's company in Massachusetts beginning in 1834, it became one of the plainest trusted blades on the frontier. The blade was usually around 7 inches, full tang, strong enough to cut rope, skin game, shape wood, slice bacon, scrape hides, pry loose material, and still go back on the belt. The Green River stamp became familiar in trading posts because men used these knives until the steel thinned. Outfitting posts could sell working knives for around $1, which made them reachable for families who could not afford fancy sidearms. A Green River knife did not need a reputation to matter. It earned one by being used every day. When trouble came after dark, the blade was already close because work had kept it there. It was not famous first, it was useful first. From here, the list crosses into the objects that carried the whole meaning of the trail. These were not just things a family used because they were nearby. They stayed close when the fire burned low, the oxen stopped moving, the river rose, or the mountains cut the wagon road down to mud and rock. The closer we get to number 1, the less this is about fighting, and the more it is about confidence. Steel at the belt, a blade with a reputation, a firearm that could feed the camp, an axe that could build the road, and one rifle that made Oregon feel possible. Number 5, the belt axe. The belt axe was small enough to ride on a man's hip and serious enough to sleep beside. Smaller than a felling axe, with a head around 1 pound and a handle 14 to 16 inches long, it could split kindling, drive stakes, chop rope, shape rough wood, and clear brush from a campsite. Frontier traders and plainsmen had carried tools like it long before the Oregon Trail filled with family wagons. By the 1840s, an experienced traveler understood why a short axe mattered. It needed no powder, no cap, no spark, and no dry weather. That made it different from a gun in the dark. A rifle had to be loaded, a pistol could misfire. But a belt axe waited exactly where the hand expected it, close to the blanket or hanging from a peg inside the wagon. When canvas moved after midnight and the fire had burned low, a man did not want theory. He wanted weight, edge, and reach. The belt axe was the frontier answer to having no second chance when the night came close. Number 4, the Bowie knife. The Bowie knife carried a reputation before it ever reached the wagon train. Its blade often ran 9 to 15 inches, with a clip point, a heavy spine, and a guard meant to keep a hand from sliding forward when things got close. The name reached frontier memory after Jim Bowie and the sandbar fight near Natchez in 1827. By the 1830s and 1840s, several southern states had already treated large fighting knives as a public problem. In towns, a Bowie could make the law nervous. West of the Missouri River, the law thinned out faster than the wagon tracks. That was why pioneers understood it differently. A Bowie could cut meat, split small wood, dig, pry, shave kindling, and do the work of several tools badly enough to survive. But everyone around the fire knew the second meaning. A blade that long did not need a speech, and no tired wagon captain wanted to hear one start. It could turn a camp argument quiet without leaving the belt. The Bowie was not just a knife. It was a warning with a handle. Number 3, the double-barreled shotgun. The double-barreled shotgun was the firearm a frightened family could understand immediately. 2 barrels, 2 triggers or 1 trigger in sequence. 2 chances before the long pause of reloading. Loaded with birdshot, it put prairie chickens, rabbits, quail, and geese into the pot. Loaded heavier, it became a camp defense weapon that did not require the clean aim of a long rifle. At close range, the pattern mattered more than marksmanship. That was why emigrant advice from the 1850s favored practical guns over romantic ones. The trail did not reward a beautiful shot if hunger reached camp first. A decent shotgun could cost $12 to $20, enough to make a family think hard before buying, but not enough to ignore if they could afford it. Beside a wagon circle, 30 yards could feel like the whole world, especially when the animals were restless and the children were asleep. At night, 1 barrel could answer the noise near the animals. The second could answer whatever came after. 1 barrel fed the family, the other made sure the family woke up. On the Oregon Trail, That was not elegance. That was insurance. Number 2. The felling axe. The felling axe was not just a weapon on the Oregon Trail. It was the tool that made the journey possible one night, one crossing, and one broken wheel at a time. A full-sized axe might carry a head around 3.5 pounds on a 32-inch hickory handle. That gave it the reach to clear brush, fell small trees, split firewood, shape emergency wagon parts, cut poles for shelter, and open a path when weather or deadfall blocked the way. Trail guides understood this. A family could leave behind furniture, trunks, even sentimental things when the wagon grew too heavy. But losing the axe meant losing fire, repairs, shelter, and sometimes the road itself. Wagon trains needed axemen not for drama, but because trails washed out, timber fell, and riverbanks had to be cut down. In a fight, that same reach created a circle no knife wanted to enter. But its deeper power was not violence. It was continuation, mile after mile, through timber, mud, and broken ground. A dull axe meant a cold camp. A lost axe meant a stranded family. No axe, no fire. No fire, no camp. No camp, no Oregon. Number 1. The percussion cap rifle. The percussion cap rifle belongs at number 1 because it changed what an ordinary family could believe about the West. Flintlocks had carried earlier generations, but damp weather, river crossings, and prairie storms exposed their weakness. The percussion system used a small copper cap on a nipple to ignite the main powder charge, making the shot far more reliable when moisture was in the air and hands were cold. By the mid-1840s, percussion rifles were becoming the serious frontier choice. They were not all Hawken rifles. Some J. Henry and Lehman-style plains rifles were lighter, more affordable, and closer to what an emigrant family could actually carry. A practical percussion rifle might cost around $14, still painful, but less unreachable than a $25 Hawken. It could drop game on the plains, guard the wagon line, and fire when an old flintlock might stay silent. That reliability gave families something more valuable than power. It gave them nerve. A father did not need to believe the trail was safe. He only needed to believe his rifle would answer when called, even after rain. Number 1 was not the biggest weapon under canvas. It was the sound that made Oregon feel possible. The Oregon Trail was never just a road west. It was a test of weight, nerve, judgment, and the few objects a family trusted enough to pack under canvas. Some were famous, most were not. A wrench, a rope, a knife, a pan, a horn of powder, a plain working axe, they did not look like the weapons of a legend. But legends were not what kept a wagon moving through mud, sickness, river crossings, and nights where help was too far away to matter. That was the hard truth of the trail. Pioneer families survived with tools first, weapons second, and courage only when the tools held. Drop a comment and tell me which one you would have packed first. Subscribe for more forgotten weapons from the darker side of American history.